So before we get started today, I wanted to ask you guys, would you be interested in the shirt I'm wearing? I was thinking of making it available to you guys. I just wanted to see if any of you would be interested. Also, a lot of you have been reaching out on Instagram, and I really appreciate it, and I would be curious if you want to use the hashtag #NotJazz and tag me when you do your solos or anything like that. I'd love to hear you guys play, and especially if you're like me, where you love jazz, but you just sound not jazz. We've all seen or been the kind of player that gets really excited about getting a nice new guitar, one that's maybe more ergonomic or has cooler pickups and will sound better, and then be the same person who brings the first amp we ever bought to the gig, completely ignoring the fact that a nicer amp would be a fantastic pairing with our new guitar. It makes sense because when we practice around the house, we carry our guitars with us, and we don't also carry our amps around our neck because we don't want to break our backs. When in a practice-heavy time in my life, I go about 50-50, maybe even 60-40 in terms of playing unplugged versus playing plugged in. So during this time, I end up really caring about the acoustic sound and acoustic resonance of my electric guitar. Also, if I'm just going through an amp to get a good clean tone, a lot of amps will do, not necessarily anything specific. I wanted to show you guys a few examples of clean tones on pickup positions 5, 4, 3, and 2 on my Bassguy so you could hear the difference for yourself. When I would gig with one amp and some pedals, I would really get used to the sound of that amp with those pedals. And that would dictate, the sounds available to me and how I was going to sit in the mix. When I started using modelers, I understood how changing an amp could change your tone wildly, even if it was between the same brand. Even if I used 5 different Fender-like amps or anything like that, each one would have its own specific voice that would change the guitar and how it sat in the mix. When I initially got a modeler, it wasn't because of my curiosity of amps, it was just convenience. It was basically, I didn't want to pay for shipping for my amp, and I didn't want to put a road case around it, and I didn't want to, break it and try to fix it while on the road. I wanted something that was going to sound great and fit in my backpack. Once I started seeing the specific characteristics that all these different amps had, it was much easier for me to kind of recreate classic tones if I wanted to. Amps that were getting modeled in my little fractal unit had much more specific characteristics than, say, like a pedal that was supposed to mimic it but going through the amp that I already had. When you see Tim Pierce on YouTube, you see all those amps behind him, right? You know, he has all those because they get wonderful different sounds for all those sessions he does. I don't have that budget, nor do I have the reputation where I'm just getting that stuff for free or at some wild discount. So I go a very different route that still sounds really good to my ear. When I was playing like 3-hour gigs a few times a week, I could change presets for every single gig that week. And when I was playing the same songs with new presets, I really heard the new flavor that was brought to each of them. While a model of a super reverb or a Friedman doesn't sound like a dimed super reverb or Friedman behind you in the room with you screaming, it does sound very specific, and it still gets a great tone across while being way easier to mix, way easier to deal with live, and also a lot more characteristic, a lot more flavorful than maybe a pedal going through a very, very cheap amp. When playing live, I use an FRFR, a flat range frequency response amp, basically a PA in my case. I happen to know that PA speaker has a lot of bass, so I have to EQ for that to make it sound good. And then I just go DI out to the sound person and they make it sound great. Everything I've learned about amps and cabinets, I've actually learned about since getting my modeler, which in my case is a Fractal AX8. You know, I just never really had the budget to walk into a nice room and just go like, I want that Marshall, that Dr. Z, that Friedman, that Super Reverb, that Deluxe, that Princeton. Like, I couldn't do that. So I was able to really learn about the difference a cabinet makes for an amp, the different amps make for my guitars. If you're in a similar position as me, I would highly suggest one of these modelers just as a way to hear the amazing difference that amps make when searching for your sound. Thank you guys very much for watching. I really appreciate you, and I'll see you next week.